For centuries, people have whispered about the towering, shadowy figure that lurks in the forests. Welcome to these visually dramatized true encounters of Bigfoot, an elusive, intelligent creature that watches from the darkness. From miners deep in the wilderness to unsuspecting travelers on lonely roads, countless witnesses have come forward with chilling encounters that defy explanation. Some were stalked through the woods, their every step mirrored by something unseen. Others were frozen in terror as a massive, fur-covered figure emerged from the trees. A few even faced the creature's raw power. Boulders hurled through the night, guttural growls echoing through the silence. These 6 terrifying Bigfoot encounters span decades, each more unsettling than the last. Are they proof of a creature that has evaded capture for generations? Or are they warnings that we are not as alone in the wild as we think? Encounter 1. Submitted by witness on Saturday, September 6, 1997. Sighting of a Bigfoot by a miner, year 1996. Season summer, month September. State California, County Plumas County. Location details, Plumas National Forest, California. Observed? I was mining on the creek when some movement caught my eye. As I stood up, I saw, clear as day, a Bigfoot peering from behind a tree. The hair on my neck stood straight up on the back of my neck as I moved backwards across the creek bed away from it. As I did, I slipped on mossy rocks, fell back and banged my arm up pretty bad, which required medical attention later, keeping a close eye on what it was doing. I know exactly what I saw, as well as it saw me. We are talking about a distance of 60 to 75 yards. My mining partner was upstream from us, and it knew that too, as he kept looking upstream looking for him. My friend must have spooked it my way. As it spotted me, already acting nervous, it leaped up and climbed over some rocks and was gone, as it knew to stay low like it was in a firefight, staying as much out of sight as possible. In a panic and injured, I was heading up the trail as fast as I could. The behavior I observed was so fascinating that this thing was very tactful and knew exactly what it was doing. Quite the sure-footed creature. Also noticed was a pretty quiet area, a lot of cougar, some bears, and I've been running in those hills a long time. Medium growth vegetation and trees. Other witnesses, mining partner. Environment steep ravine approximately half a mile from a logging road. Encounter 2, submitted by witness on Tuesday, June 30th, 1998. 2 sightings by locals from the town of Quincy. Year 1995, season fall, month October, date 16th, state California, county Plumas County. Observed sent to the internet virtual Bigfoot conference mailing list. I've been interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon for many years, and have read most of the serious books covering the subject, including Krantz's stuff. About 3 years ago, I began visiting a woman in Quincy, California, a small northern Sierra community which Tom Morris notes has always been notorious for its Bigfoot sightings. He sure was right. Over the last 3 years, the local paper, the Feather River Bulletin, has reported 7 different sightings in the same general area of the county. 5 of those may have been hoaxed, but 2 deserve further discussion. The first one occurred at 1:15 a.m. on February 13, 1994. Mary and Jerry Kane, Quincy's only bakers, were returning from Reno. Near Lee Summit, 10 miles east of town, a large fur-covered animal crossed Highway 70 in front of their car and strolled up a steep bank and into the forest. It looked exactly like the many drawings they'd seen of Bigfoot. They doubt this was someone dressed in a gorilla costume. When it was light, Mary and Jerry returned to the scene and found large, deep footprints in the snow. They took pictures of the prints, wrote a narrative of their adventure, and posted the information on the wall of their bakery. I've had a chance to study the photos, and I'm convinced they aren't contrived. I've also spoken to the Kanes, and I believe they're telling the truth about their experiences. The second sighting happened near a cemetery hill, an area which divides east and west Quincy. It was about 11:30 p.m. on October 16, 1995, when Larry Riddle, out for a stroll, smelled what he thought was rotting garbage. As he was looking for the source of the smell, he felt he was being watched. He turned and saw an 8-foot fur-covered creature watching him. Riddle lived near Yellowstone most of his life. I'm familiar with bears, and this was not a bear. He stated that there was no bear-like snout. He also refuses to believe it was someone trying to fool him. He felt it would be hard to mimic an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot. "I'm sure I'm going to get laughed at," Riddle said. "This thing was real. Encounter 3, submitted by witness on Tuesday, June 9, 2020. Stalking a Forest Service worker on Pacific Crest Trail outside Quincy, year 1995, season summer, month August, state California, county Plumas County, location details. Note from investigator Matt Moneymaker. This incident happened near where the Pacific Crest Trail crosses the middle fork of the Feather River. The coordinates for that crossing, 39.808254 minus 121.045600. You can copy and paste those coordinates in Google Maps or Google Earth, and it will show you the river crossing point. Nearest town outside of Quincy, California, but very remote area. Nearest road, Highway 70. Observed, I recently read BFRO report number 26850. I felt the need to add my own experience in the same area. I too was a Forest Service employee for Plumas in the 90s. I don't know the original author. I hiked to the bottom of the Middle Fork drainage where the Pacific Crest Trail crosses the river from the Quincy side, north side, so I could brush it out and cut some poles and logs laying across the trail. First day, I had a couple guys with me, and we knocked out a good portion of it that day. I came back later in the week to finish up the remaining few miles by myself. The tactic is to go down the trail heavy with water and saw gas and work your way back up, getting lighter. I worked my way down the trail maybe about 2.5 hours to the area where we left off. I started cutting my way back up the trail. The logs were spread apart with patches of down logs and then areas of clear trail for several minutes of hiking. In the periods when I shut the saw off, I soon started to realize I was getting side-hilled by something that was downslope of me off the trail about maybe 100 to 150 feet just inside the tree line. As I moved up the trail, it did also. If it was a lion, I would have never heard it, and bears are very noisy coming through the brush. This was not wildlife. This was clearly a bipedal footfall. By the time most of my work was done, I was getting a little spooked, and I just wanted to get back up to the landing where my truck was parked. Unfortunately, I never got eyes on it, so I can't give you a visual account. I was only able to occasionally see saplings move. To be perfectly honest, I was too afraid to look. I had my head down humping gear up the trail. I was light and moving at good clip on a trail. This thing was easily able to outpace me even though it was working through steep, rocky brush and tree-covered terrain. At times it got ahead of me because of the contour of the land. And that was a little bit horrifying. This thing was agile and fast. This went on for a couple of hours. About a half hour from my truck, I stopped hearing anything. I feel I was being escorted out of the area. The whole experience was very unnerving. What bothers me the most is I don't know how long I was being watched. I was running the chainsaw intermittently with earplugs in. I'm sure the three of us were being watched on the previous trip. We just couldn't hear anything with the saws running. I've spent a lot of time in the woods and still do in a professional capacity, but that was a new one. If anybody is thinking this was a person, I'll tell you right now, there is no way. Also noticed none. Other witnesses, none that will go on record. Encounter 5, submitted by witness on Tuesday, June 14, 2005. 3 young adults encounter large aggressive biped while fishing the San Joaquin River. Year 1991, season summer, month June, date not known, state California, county Fresno County, location details on the San Joaquin River, nearest town Mendota, nearest road Ashland, observed. My story occurred around 1991 on the San Joaquin River in what would be the northwestern part of town, actually in Fresno. The area is mostly farmland and some sparse woods and vineyards. Nothing like foresty, though. Myself, my cousin, and a friend had decided to go late-night fishing at a little area on the river where the river sort of pools. There is a bridge there. It was late, and we were sitting there and fishing when we heard something making noise and looked back and saw a coyote running across the bridge heading north. The coyote kept looking back as it ran as if it was frightened. The coyote looked at us, but it was clearly focused on something behind it and it was scared. We thought at that time that was odd. We then heard what we thought was a splash, as if someone had dove into the water behind us. It was dark, so we just glanced back, but of course saw nothing. We probably sat for about 10 minutes or so, when suddenly there was a huge goosh and splash about 25 yards away in front of us. We stopped fishing and then tried looking into the darkness. This small boulder throwing continued at least 2 more times before we actually saw a dark figure about 40 yards away, standing what looked about waist high in the river. There was a full moon, so it wasn't too dark to see that it was a pretty big creature. By this time, we were starting to get scared, and were pretty much froze in place, and it began to yell at it, thinking that it could be a person. This prompted my friend to yell threats of violence, as young people are sometimes prone to do. This creature basically turned its whole body to the right of it and grabbed another boulder, and with both hands over its head, it threw it at us. This one landed about 15 yards away. It made no sound or noise, only threw small boulders. It threw about 2 more boulders, the last landing about 5 yards from us, enough to splash water on our faces. By this time, we had reeled in our lines and were trying to get out of there as fast as we could. We ran all the way back to the car, which was through some trees across a field and up a hill. We went back the next day to the area, and on rafts floated to the area where the creature had stood. My friend is about 6 feet tall and jumped in the water to see about how deep it was. The water came to his shoulders. There was no way this was a man. We even saw some of the boulders that had been thrown at the bottom of the water, as it wasn't more than 5.5 feet deep. There was a sandbar, and the boulders were at least 30 to 40 pounds. Other witnesses, 3 total, time and conditions. About 1 a.m. in the morning with full moon. Environment, mostly farmland, no houses for about 7 miles or so. There were scattered trees, vineyards, and nothing real dense. The river flows pretty good in this area. Encounter 6 man has early morning sighting near Sly Park. Year 2003, season fall, date 1, state California, county El Dorado County, nearest town Pollock Pines, nearest road Sly Park Road about 3 miles from Highway 50. Observed, I am posting this report after several months of trying to dismiss what I saw as a bear or other common animal. I have come to the conclusion that what I saw could only have been an unknown animal such as Sasquatch, as the behavior and curiosity of the animal does not match any animal I am aware of, yet is consistent with Sasquatch descriptions I have read on this and other websites. I had heard recent reports of black bear sightings becoming more common in the Pollock Pines area, and that the bears are extending their range from the Rubicon Desolation Wilderness area south to Pollock Pines. 2 black bears had recently been hit and killed on Highway 50, about 3 miles north of my encounter. All this talk of bears in our area is what led me to initially conclude that what I had seen was a bear. Approximately 5:30 a.m., sometime in early fall, I was traveling northbound about 45 miles per hour on Sly Park Road heading toward Highway 50. It was almost completely dark. There was some light starting to become visible. There were no other vehicles. I rounded a sharp corner to the left going downhill when my high beams hit a large animal on the left side of the road. It was standing on 2 legs and was facing to the left. It appeared to be grabbing at something in the trees in the front yard of a residence. As soon as my light hit the animal, it quickly turned 180 degrees to its right, in a twisting motion going down on all fours, and proceeding to run on all fours to the other side of the road. The right side of the road had thick brush, which at that time appeared to be about 3 feet tall. The right side of the road also opens into thick forest land. Upon first seeing the animal, I slowed down to about 25 miles per hour, to be sure this large bear got across the road without me hitting it. As I drove past the location where the animal had entered the brush, I looked out the passenger window, and to my surprise, I saw its face in the brush looking right into the window only a few feet away. I saw large reddish-brown eyes, a large brown head, and a dull black, not shiny area that would have been the nose. I did not see ears, and since it was looking straight on, I was unable to discern a flat or pronounced snout. In retrospect, the face appeared to convey an emotional look of concern or panic. During the encounter, I did not consider the animal to be anything other than a bear until several minutes later, when I thought it was odd that the animal would cross the road to escape, then stop just inside the brush to watch me pass. I would think a bear would continue to run into the forest. Even with this curious behavior, I continued to assume it had been a bear. I was shocked into reconsidering my explanation a few weeks later, when road crews cleared the brush away, revealing that the brush was growing on a drop-off that was 5 feet lower than the road, making the brush 8 feet tall. This would rule out the animal being on all fours while looking into my passenger window. The animal had to have stood up again immediately after entering the brush to reach the height required to look into my window, that would place the animal at approximately 8 feet tall. Is it likely that all the behavior I've described can be attributed to a bear? Not likely in my opinion. Other witnesses, no other witness. A girl has daytime sighting near Twain Harte, California. The year was 1978 to 1979. Season, summer month, August, California. County, Tuolumne County. Details. The campground has grown quite a bit since 1978 or 1979. I went back to check out the area a few months ago and was surprised to see how much it had changed. It is now more like a mobile home park towards the back where we had camped. The homes are very close together, and I could not see a way without trespassing to get back to the area where I had entered the forest. Nearest town, Twain Harte. Nearest road, off HY 108, observed. Around the age of 12 or 13, I'm 34 now, I went with my parents to Sugar Pine Campground in the Sonora Twain Harte area in California. We were there for 2 weeks in our 21 travel trailer, and I was completely bored out of my mind. I also had just started menstruating for the first time while we were in the middle of our trip. Mentioning this seems weird, but will make sense later. At the campground, I met a little girl, a few years younger. She had been living there with her parents who were without a home. She showed me a trail that went way out into the woods where there was a small stream, only a few feet wide, with a big rock. If you climbed up on top of the big rock, there was a tree branch that you could grab onto and swing over the stream. We played there for a good while and returned to the campground when it started getting dark. The next day I looked for my friend, but she had apparently moved on with her family. Her campsite was empty. I figured I'd go back out to the stream and play for a while since I had nothing better to do. The stream and rock area was a little further than a city block out into the dense forest. The whole trail was shaded since the pines were so thick. I merrily went out into the woods, with absolutely no hesitation, looking forward to some fun. When I got within about 5 to 6 feet from the big rock, I had the strange feeling someone was watching me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up a bit. I still was not afraid and began looking around me, thinking maybe my friend was out there playing somewhere close by and hadn't left as I had thought. I looked in front of me and slowly turned counterclockwise, peering into the dense woods. I continued turning until I was looking directly down the small footpath I just walked to the rock. As I looked at the pathway, I noticed a very large pine tree that was edging the path had a funny-looking arm thing wrapped around its middle. I looked, still not afraid, and was trying to figure out what the heck it was. I could make out long fingers and very dark furry brown hair covering the entire arm. I thought to myself, that's not a branch, and it's not a bear's paw. It sure looks like a hand. Now, this tree was approximately 15 from where I was standing and directly next to the pathway I had just come from. As I continued to look at the arm, still not afraid since in my own mind I kept thinking it couldn't possibly be an arm even though it sure looked exactly like one, I saw a face peek out from the opposite side of the tree and look at me. It was a very flat face, very dark brown. Couldn't make out any features except the eyes, which were looking right at me. Let me tell you, I was never very athletic, but as soon as we made eye contact, I don't think my feet touched the ground. Worse yet, I had to run right by it to get the heck out of there. I flew back to camp and ran into the trailer. I didn't tell my mom or dad about it since I thought they'd think I was crazy. Needless to say, I stayed in that trailer for the rest of our vacation at Sugar Pine. When I mention I started my period for the first time, I believe animals have an uncanny ability to sense and smell those types of things. Maybe it caught wind of me and decided to follow and check me out. The creature was hunched over a bit, so it's hard to tell exactly how tall it was, or if it was a juvenile. I do know that the pine tree it had, its arm wrapped around, was around 4 wide in circumference, which makes it a pretty long arm. Another thing to mention is that I don't remember smelling anything. Also noticed, while camping at Sugar Pine, I had heard that a child had disappeared recently, kidnapped from the campground, and nobody knew what happened to him or her. My brother checked the newspaper archives in that area just a few months back to try and find any further information, but could not locate anything to substantiate this. It did make me wonder, though. Witnesses. I was alone, just minding my own business. Dense pine forest, near a 6-foot rock by a small creek, about a city block out into the woods behind the campground. Six terrifying Bigfoot encounters through time. The conclusion. From the dense forests of California to the quiet riverbanks under the moonlight, these chilling encounters remind us that something massive, intelligent, and elusive may still be lurking just beyond the tree line. Witnesses have described the same eerie sensation, being watched, stalked, or even confronted by a creature too large, too agile, and too calculated to be mistaken for any known animal. Whether you believe in Bigfoot or not, the fear and conviction in these stories cannot be ignored. Perhaps the next time you find yourself alone in the wilderness, listening to the rustling of unseen movement in the shadows, you'll wonder, what if the legends are real? Keep your eyes open, your camera ready, and remember, you may not be alone.